I would enjoy hearing your take on story progression. I sometimes struggle with keeping the beats of the story interesting and engaging for my players. Any insights would be greatly appreciated.
I think the key thing to remember here is that role-playing games are not traditional storytelling. They don't follow the same format as a book or a comic or a film. They're very different, and to a very large extent, you as the games master do not determine what is going on. Even in an old style, more dictatorial games master role. So players create their own beat and rhythm to the story through the things that they're interested in, right? And the things with which they feel more involved. So in a TV series, for example, you might have a whole episode devoted to some grand, great climactic battle between the different factions. And that might take a whole episode or 2 episodes. Build up, battle, climax, spread across the 2 episodes, and then the aftermath in the second half of the second episode. Because that's big and important, and it is spectacular. Right, so for the viewers, that's a climax point that they've been building up to for the whole series, and this is the payoff. In tabletop games, that's often extremely boring for players, and they will not take a great deal of interest in it because they are just specks in a grander battlefield, and it's you as the games master, to a large extent, providing exposition. Right, the players may have contributed a lot of background stuff. This doesn't just apply to battles; it applies to any sort of climax of a big plot that's going off. So they might have done things that will alter the outcome, but the battle itself is just not that interesting. Meanwhile, it would be absolute death to a TV series if it spent 3 or 4 episodes with these grand adventurers just like helping out on a farm or becoming obsessed with their pet goblin, Dave the Goblin, and doing all kinds of nonsense around him for 2 or 3 episodes. But for the players at the table in the game, those things can be fascinating. They can be incredibly enjoyable. Maybe they decide to just help out an orphanage or something for a while. It's not a great grand battle. It's not a beholder in a dungeon or a dragon guarding a horde, but it's something that the players become invested in. Like I say, it would be absolute death in conventional storytelling, but here it creates attachment of the players to the story and to the world. It interacts with the world, and it pays them off emotionally in a way it wouldn't in other forms of storytelling. So that's a very long-winded answer of how things to kind of keep in mind when it comes to story beats themselves. I don't really think of them as story beats because of the aforementioned. They don't really work that way. Rather, these are sort of plot vertices. Whatever else is going on, this will happen or needs to happen, this will happen or needs to happen, and this will happen or needs to happen, right? And you've got to get through those 3 points, but you don't necessarily need to make those events or those key points massively engaging in and of themselves. That's more for you as the games master to track how far along this plot, this storyline things are going. And so it's more about the way you structure it for yourself in terms of your preparation and so on than it is necessarily for the players. The players don't need to be tremendously engaged with these key plot points. They just kind of need to happen and go forward. So I think that the best games masters are improvisational. So story elements can happen in peculiar orders or with long gaps between them. But a good games master knows when to chuck that out the window and go with what is engaging the players, what they're enjoying and what they want to do in the game, as well as having this other stuff going on in the background. So TLDR, don't worry about it. Just use them as more like time markers. Okay, we're at this point in the story, and indulge the players when they're having fun, and you will have a much more memorable, much more engaged game where they buy into the world and become a part of it and care about it more, and that will ultimately help the plot.